Hey, I'm Pronger Faulkner. I'm here today with Judith Labert to talk about our collaboration book called Absolute Will, which released last month in October 2021. Thank you for being here, Judith.
Yes, of course.
So the idea for this collaboration came to me earlier this year as I was still working on my first book, and I kept allowing myself to get distracted with other things on the to-do list. You know how that is. One of which was trying to come up with a good way to fundraise for a project that my fiance Mike and I want to do down in Nicaragua. And eventually the urge to create this inspirational collaboration got so strong that I knew I needed to get going on it. I really wanted to get women from around the world, from as many countries as possible, and make this a global effort of inspiring others. And I wanted every story to have a health and willpower aspect to it. And when the idea came to me that a book collaboration would be a perfect way to fundraise, this book suddenly became my #1 priority to make it happen by the end of this year. And as you know, we had some tight timelines. All of the profits from the author entry fees and the sales through the first month of our launch are going towards Mike and I building a house in Nicaragua for a family who doesn't have a home of their own. I'm so thrilled that we have 21 authors in this book: Judith, me, and 19 other amazing women from 7 countries around the world. Our authors are from Canada, the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, Australia, South Africa, and Bulgaria. And we have linked arms to share our personal, vulnerable, insightful, true stories of willpower when facing emotional and mental health crises, physical injuries, and disease. This book is self-published and self-promoted by all of our authors, not done through a traditional publishing house. It's been a grassroots effort, which makes what we've done with it so far all the more incredible. I was pretty sure that I could get us to a best-selling ranking with Absolute Will after I was able to hit bestseller with my first book in 2 categories. I tweaked some of my marketing strategies, and I knew it would be probable to hit a bestseller spot because we had a built-in launch team with all 21 of us sharing it. What I didn't expect was that we would hit #1 bestseller in 8 categories across 3 countries: Canada, the US, and Australia, making all of us international bestsellers, and that we would hit #1 new release in 30 categories across 4 countries: Canada, the US, Australia, and the UK. And this is all just in the first 4 weeks. The reviews on this book so far say that the stories are raw, real, thought-provoking, heartwarming, life-changing, well-written, and that this book is a fantastic read. Can't put it down. The stories are truly inspiring. You feel a personal connection to each of the writers' journeys, and that this book has given so much hope to others. These are all direct quotes from reviews on Amazon. Judith's chapter is called Finding My Voice, chapter 15 in Absolute Will. Welcome, Judith.
Thank you.
So can you tell everyone a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what your chapter in Absolute Will is about?
Yes. Well, I'm a mom and wife, and I grew up in Wyoming, and I moved out to the Pacific Northwest in Southern Oregon, United States, probably about 6 years ago now, and just love it out here. Just the change in climate and different opportunities. Wyoming's a little, doesn't have a lot going on. So it's a nice change of culture out here. So I'm a mental health therapist and integrative mental health practitioner. So I'm a life coach. There's a lot of things that I do kind of on the side in addition to doing some homeschooling of my youngest. And my chapter highlights some of the trauma that I had that I didn't really realize was trauma. So even I'm a trauma therapist, but didn't really realize how some of the events in my life had impacted me to the degree that they did. So I was impacted both emotionally, physically, and spiritually in my journey. And so a lot of it was, how did I overcome? And a lot of that was finding my voice, finding who I was, learning how to speak it, and just kind of being honest and open with myself in the process to find that healing.
That's amazing. And a little bit ironic too, right? How that kind of
Yes.
all ties together with
Yes.
what your career is as well. Yeah, that's just fascinating. That's amazing.
Yeah, I
So
love
when you
the emotion body connection. It's just kind of driven me on that path to open that door a little bit more. So it's pretty exciting for me.
absolutely, and you didn't really realize that that's what was happening in the moment when it was happening, right?
Right. Yeah, and as a therapist, I think a lot of times we understand, well, emotions are pretty big and we have to work through them. But when we go through trauma, a lot of times there's a kind of a blunting of how big emotions actually feel. And so we don't really take that in the same way. And so we just kind of feel like, oh, I'm fine. It's all good when it's not. And so we're, it's that coping mechanism that we often have to try to get through things. Sometimes that becomes a habit and more for our detriment than for help. And so that was a big learning for myself of when I say I'm fine, sometimes I'm not. And I have to know that, okay, there's a balance here of, having that self-care. That self-care is really huge to be able to know where I'm at and how to gauge that.
Yeah, and recognizing that is just so important, and it's so powerful that you're now able to use what you've actually experienced to then help your clients.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing. So when you first found out about this collaboration, what made you want to jump in?
Um, well, it was really funny because being in the business group that I'm in, we were talking a little bit probably around this time last year about how important our stories are. And I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'll tell my story, or maybe there's some significance here. And it came about in my mind early in the year, probably around January, February, that I thought, I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to create a book. I'm just going to tell my story. And I set the date of October 2021. And of course, life happens, right? And so it was not super long ago. It was like August, September. And I all of a sudden that goal popped back into my head. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen. Really haven't thought too much about that. I know that there's a lot more steps involved than what I knew I could commit to time wise. And so when I saw that you were looking for people in your book, I thought, well, maybe. And your response was really overwhelming of, oh, we really need this story. So it was just confirming to me. And then when you told me that the date was October 2021, I was like, well, that confirms it. My story needs to be there. So it looked different, but it was still within that same timeline and kind of what I had envisioned in some capacity. So it was pretty cool.
I just love that. That's just such a great example of how you can just kind of manifest things, and they're not always the way that you envision that it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
So, but just if you're open to the possibility, it can still work out.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so much for the better too, because now I have a better idea, not even close really, but a better idea of all of the work that you've put into it and getting a better picture of, how it all comes together. And so I feel like I still only have a snippet of the process, but knowing that it's like, okay, I have a little bit more of an understanding and an appreciation for the process.
That's so awesome. So writing seems to bring out different experiences for different people. How was the actual writing process for you? And were there any surprises along the way?
I think for me, the process was relatively easy. I think it was the hardest part was trying to keep it to, the shorter version of it. Because I think in my head from back in January-ish, I had written the long version. Like, let me tell you all the details, go into all sorts of events and different pieces of it that, then in my brain, I had to try to figure out how do I pare this down and highlight the pieces that really were the most impactful or prevalent for the situation and really explain what I want to say well. So that was the hardest part for me. Not so much completely knowing what to say, but more of what's going to be the most concise way to say it. So I think it was a really good process, especially getting a better understanding of the wording that I wanted. I think that's always the hardest part too, when it's like, is that what I really want to say or convey? that message. So fine tuning some of those pieces was really kind of a fun way to experiment with kind of my story too.
That's awesome. And because we only had 2,000 words to work with for each chapter, it really does make, being concise really important. So that's, yeah, that in itself can be challenging and be a good exercise for. Yeah, when you have your own book, you can do however many words you want, right?
Right.
You want to write 40,000 words, go for it. But yes, in this case, we were trying to keep everyone to a certain word count, and yeah, that can be challenging.
Yeah.
But you did end up getting so many great pieces in there, and I love how it all came together in the end. Yes, really cool.
I do too.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
So
awesome
based on this experience, do you think you'll want to write your own book in the future then, or be in another collaboration at some point?
I love the collaboration aspect of it, just because I think for a variety of reasons, just like you said, there's just so much power in the collaborating process, and sharing that experience with other people has been really fun. And not only just their stories and how inspirational and going through that piece as well, but, learning how to do this. Like I said, I've only learned a little bit out of the whole process, but it's definitely puts me a little bit further along. So I like the idea of collaboration. I definitely have considered the idea of at what point do I maybe want to do my own thing. I don't know time-wise or just my own knowledge level if I'm quite there yet, but I anticipate at some point that could definitely be a thing. So
that's awesome. And I mean, if you're a little bit, if you're just not quite sure about the publishing process, there are lots of great resources, and really you can learn as you go. So there's no real like deadline or timeline for that, and you can just figure it out as you hit each step of the way. So
yeah, quite an adventure. So
yeah. So what's your top piece of advice for someone that may be thinking that they want to become a published author?
Kind of like you said, just learn along the way, I think, and knowing that everybody has a story to tell. So I think that's the biggest thing that has been my message throughout all of this, is that sometimes we don't always feel like we have a lot of really great insights, or that we have a lot of really good knowledge, or, everybody else has experienced that too. But we all have different stories, and our experiences are unique in many ways. And but yet there's that community piece within them too. We learn from each other. We can gain insights from one another. So I just love that idea that we all have a story to tell. And so I think that's something to really think about for everybody, to figure out what is your story. And as a trauma therapist too, I always tell people that when you can tell your story, that you're progressing. So if you can't really tell your story, you're just not there yet. It doesn't mean that your story is not valuable or that it's not worth being shared. It's just that you might not quite be ready or healed to talk about your story in the ways that, you will when you're in that better place.
I just love that. I've got goosebumps. That's amazing. That is really powerful. Wow.
Yes.
So what else are you up to? What's next for you?
Well, I'm working on some different mental health courses. Being in the situation that we are in the world these days, anxiety and stress, and there's just been a lot of need in our culture. So I'm trying to work on some courses and figure out how do I help people in different ways, where maybe it's you don't have to come see me one-on-one. It doesn't cost as much. It's, better resources to be able to support people. So that's one of my main goals right now, I'm working on a couple different courses to present to people. And then I do life coaching as well. That was a big thing through my story, is I needed somebody to be there for me. I didn't really have anybody, so I'd never really thought about life coaching. And so that's something that I'm really trying to figure out how to do better with, supporting people through that role as well, because it's different than therapy. Not everybody needs a therapist. And so I'm trying to expand some of the life coaching pieces that can include health coaching or just some other areas in which I work too. So those are two big on the business side. we just recently acquired an Airbnb, so it's a few hours away from us, but that's been kind of a fun adventure to learn
That's very
learn about
cool.
that.
Wow.
So
So
yeah, so that's
is it turnkey, ready to go, and you're already, wow.
yep.
Neat.
Yeah. So it's a nice little place we can get away to, and we're learning a little bit as we go. There's always some hiccups when you're learning anything, right? So figuring that out, and then we're doing all sorts of little home projects and just, maybe doing a little bit of traveling in the future too. So we love doing different things as a family and enjoying the area that we live in here. So gorgeous
awesome.
area.
That's
so
awesome. I just love how you've, turned what happened to you into a way to help your clients, and that you're constantly learning. I really admire that. And, you're just constantly trying to try out new things and see what you can add to your very, very varied education.
Yes.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. So if you have enjoyed getting to know more about Judith and you want to connect with her, you can do that through her website at judithlabert.com. Judith, thank you so much for being in this collaboration and for your time today. Your perspective is so inspiring, and I'm honored that you chose to share your story in Absolute Will.
Thank you. I'm honored to be a part of it.